What's up, everybody? Zero.exe here with the Class Soldiers podcast, doing a little bit of a solo video. I wanted to record something and give my thoughts on the Nintendo Direct from earlier today, the March 27th one. Now that I've had a chance to kind of let it digest and really think about all the announcements and their importance, because at first glance, it didn't seem like anything impressive. I think on my reaction, I gave it like a C+. Definitely want to correct that. I think I was wrong. Definitely having to wake up super early to watch it didn't help my mood, but I was really hoping to see, something like a Fire Emblem. Nobody was expecting anything grand with the Switch 2 Direct next week, but I didn't get what I wanted specifically, and a lot of the announcements just seemed kind of random. But, there's a lot of good stuff here, and I wanted to talk about it after the fact. It started off with some Dragon Quest, the 1 and 2 HD 2D remake. I don't know anything about the story of the first two games, but they seem to heavily imply that the girl that kind of appears at the end of the trailer, where she comes out the door, is a new addition. So it sounds like these aren't just remakes and they're adding new content, so that's really cool to see. I love it when games do that. I mean, Monolith Soft is, known for that. They don't just remake their games, they put new content in it. Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, they threw more story content in to fix the cliffhanger. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, they had the Bionis' shoulder, which was a scrapped area from the Wii. So it's great to see remakes add some type of extra value besides just being the same game. So that was really cool. I think that was a really strong start for the Nintendo Direct, and it's a great announcement. I'm excited for it. I still need to play 3 HD 2D. But yeah. Moving on, they did actually mention the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, which I didn't think they would do. I thought they would just kind of pretend it didn't exist. That's just kind of their standard operating procedure with stuff like that. So it was interesting to hear them mention, hey, by the way, next week we got that Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. That they kind of just threw that in there. But moving on, I believe after Dragon Quest, we had the headlines announcements. So, there was the sequel to the AI Somnium Files. I know that's more of a niche franchise, but it definitely has a dedicated fan base that, they're eating good. And I didn't think this franchise would keep going past maybe a game or two. So, cool to see that continue on and get more content. Raidou Remastered. So, this one was cool. Another Atlus game. Again, it's one I haven't played, but it's a remake of an older game. It's a different one. There's a lot of turn-based Atlus JRPGs on the Switch. You got your Persona 5 Royal, Shin Megami Tensei 5, and Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, Etrian Odyssey. So there's a lot of turn-based Atlus games. So it was interesting to see this one come up where it's more action-based, something a little different from what you're used to seeing. Pretty cool announcement. There's also new content as well. It's not shown here. Maybe on editing I'll throw up a picture of it, but there's some promotional art for the game where you can clearly see Idun, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, the Apple Girl, the Golden Apple Girl from Shin Megami Tensei 5. She's apparently in the game. She showed up in the promo art. So again, love it when remakes do this, where they put more stuff that wasn't originally in the game. So it gives fans a reason to replay the game outside of just a shiny new coat of paint. It's not just, let's up-res it, pass it, good to go. Then we had the Pac-Man spiritual successor, the Shadow Labyrinth. This was initially announced at, I believe it was Game Awards last year, towards the end of 2024, and it was just kind of huh? Okay. I mean, it's weird, but, this could work. And it's Metroidvania-style game, 2D, where this trailer showed some new mechanics. The whole mech thing where Pac-Man becomes the core of the giant mech that you turn into. Still don't know exactly how it works, but it looks fun. It looks like a fun game. The art style is really nice. So I think that's going to be a good release for the end of the Switch's life. Not bad, I feel like this Direct came about talking about what was the purpose of this Direct with the Switch 2 Direct next week. I think a lot of third parties wanted to show off their games, and there was a lot of third party presence in this Direct, so that's probably what made Nintendo change their tune, because they're not ones to bunch up Directs like this without reason. So I feel like they maybe got some pressure from some of their indie and third-party partners, where it's like, hey, you know, you were going to help us advertise the game. What's going on? Like, you know, this game is on Switch 1. I don't want it to just show up at a Switch 2 Direct. If it's also here, we might lose out. After that, they showed Patapon 1 and 2. So I knew what Patapon was. I didn't realize at the time when it was shown that it was a Sony franchise. That didn't even occur to me. I was just like, oh, it's Patapon, cool. Never played it, but I was at least tangentially aware of the franchise. But yeah, so this is one of those things where it's like, oh, so now there's like Sony games on Switch that outside of like the Lego Horizon when that came out. So I'm trying to think back to what was the first big Microsoft announcement on Switch. I think it was Hollow Knight. No, not Hollow Knight. Oh man, Ori and the Blind Forest, I think it was. So when Ori came, that was originally like an Xbox Studios game. So that was one that was like, oh, that's a Microsoft game, you know, on Switch. And we know about Minecraft, but Minecraft is universal. That's going to be put on any console that can run it. So, I mean, that was more of an exception. But yeah, so now we're seeing like actual Sony games on Switch. I'm wondering if this was one of the ones that was like rumored to be like, oh, a third-party game will be here. That's going to cause a lot of conversation. And maybe not for the game itself, but just for the fact that it's notable that it is a Sony game showing up on Nintendo Switch and not just like a Lego spin-off like the Horizon Zero Dawn. Story of Seasons showed up. Cue the memes for Farming Sim. I believe it's a remake of a DS game. So again, remakes, remasters, that was the name of the game. And that's kind of what we expected going in. You know, the big hitters are coming next week for the Switch 2 Direct, but there's still some things that need to come out for the 150 million users that still have a Switch 1. So this is one of those things that we kind of expected. Lots of remakes and remastered. So after that, we had our first Please Take a Look at This trailer. And you know, anytime that Nintendo rep comes on the screen and says, please take a look at this without elaborating further, you're going to get something really good. And we got another trailer for Metroid Prime 4. I think that's something most of us predicted was going to be here. It would have been weird for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond to not show up here at some point. It was announced as a Switch game, so even if there's a Switch 2 version of this game, like a standalone version, there's still going to be a Switch 1. There's no way they were going to be like, oh, okay, by the way, this is now a Switch 2 exclusive. They weren't going to bait and switch. It's been in development for years, and it's even gone and scrapped development, started over from scratch. There's no way this wasn't coming out on Switch. That being said, this is something that Soldier and I were talking about a little bit earlier offline, that this may be the best looking game on Nintendo Switch when everything's considered. Like, even better than some of the magic that Monolith Soft has done, and it comes down to scope. Obviously, this is not going to be a massive open world that you can seamlessly go through without loading zones or anything like that. It's more focused, more corridor-based, but it's running at a smooth, clean 60 frames a second. It looks good. As far as I can tell, it's being rendered in a full 1080p resolution, or at least close to it, to where you don't really notice it, and it just looks good. And we kind of got a taste of this with the Metroid Prime remaster. That game looked amazing. You know, it's fantastic looking game. What a great way to send off the Switch. So that was a big one. Metroid Prime 4. Don't have a lot more to say about that. The Disney Villains Curse Cafe, that one kind of threw me off guard, where it's like, oh, it's, you know, I wasn't really paying attention to the titles at the bottom, and then the book closes, and then boom, right in your face, you have freaking Ursula and Gaston. So that was kind of a funny little moment, but I mean, it's Disney. They're going to keep pumping out games. I know they had that other one that was like a 3D like town builder sim. So, cool. Another game for the Disney fans. This one looks like it's for more of an older audience. But yeah, Disney Villains Curse Cafe. Cool story. This one, Eternal Life of Goldman. It's like almost like a Cuphead style 2D platformer, but with the mechanics of it, it reminded me of DuckTales, you know, where Scrooge, you know, you jump on things with his cane. Looked exactly like that. Really clean looking game. This might be one of those sleepers. And we had the Gradius Origins collection. I'm always down for collections of games, especially older arcade games. So that was kind of a fun announcement. And there's even a new game in there. They had the, what is it, Gradius, or not Gradius, the one that's not Gradius, Salamander 3. So they even added a brand new game in the same style as the old one. So that's fun. If you're a Gradius fan, I'm sure you're super excited. Rift of the Necrodancer. This is one where I was like, oh, awesome. Because this game's already out on Steam as far as I'm aware, and it's been out for a little while. And it was nice to see, okay, cool, it's on Switch, and it was a shadow drop later today. I definitely downloaded it. It's a lot of fun. I haven't gotten into, like, all the mini games and stuff. I'm still learning the mechanics, because it's one of those games where it's like you can't just be good at rhythm games. You also have to kind of know how the enemies move and react. It's just like Crypt of the Necrodancer, you know? You can't just tap to the beat. You got to know what the enemies do, too. So there's a lot going on. We had a Tamagotchi Plaza game, or they said Tamagotchi. I think that's wrong. I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Tamagotchi, but the narrator called it Tamagotchi. Cool. I don't have much to say about that one. That's great. We got a trailer for Pokemon Legends ZA. I was very surprised to see this. I didn't think we would see anything more about this until like much later in the year, and I didn't think it would show up in a Nintendo Direct, but cool. We got more info on Legends ZA and why it's called Legends ZA, with the whole ranking system where at night you fight the trainers to rank up. You start at rank Z and you gotta climb all the way to rank A. They didn't really show anything like new megas. We know they're coming, but they didn't show much that we haven't already kind of seen in terms of like how the game works. I'm still not super impressed with how it looks. Still wholly disappointing how it still kind of just looks like a GameCube game. I mean, it is what it is at this point. We're going to play it for the gameplay. The graphics are just... They are what they are, you know? We're not going to get anything significantly better, but like just the low-res textures is kind of a bummer. But hey, at this point, I'm at the point where I'm like, as long as it stays running at 30 frames a second and I don't have massive dips or like things clipping through environments and it looks like it's still a dev build, I'll call that a win. And the gameplay does look fun. I love Legends Arceus. I think that's probably the best Pokemon experience on Switch, hands down, just in terms of like the gameplay loop and the experimental, you know, battle system, and the fact that it just worked. You know, it's one of those risks that you almost never see Game Freak take, and it worked. It was a great game, tons of fun. Some Soldier mentioned to me is how like in Legends Arceus you had like ride Pokemon that did different things, like I can't remember its name, but Sneasel's Evolution, the regional form. You could get in a basket on its back and climb walls, where in this game, it's not as, like, cohesive. It's just, oh, you get a teleporter to go up to the roof. And, yeah, I agree. It's not as, like, cool to have the in-universe things. But we'll see. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that, but the game itself looks fun, if not looks good. So... we did get a release date, so that's the thing that surprised me. It's like they bothered with a trailer outside of what they just showed like 3 weeks ago, but didn't bother like nailing down when it would come out, which was kind of a bummer. I was hoping, oh, by the way, this comes out, you know, October 20th or whatever. So we'll see. It's still late 2025. Rhythm Heaven Groove. This was an awesome announcement. I found out just some context behind that. I guess if either the director or the creator of the game was like battling cancer, and they beat cancer a couple years ago, I think it was. So that's the reason we hadn't seen a Rhythm Heaven game in so long. And now that the director is better health-wise, that's why we're now finally seeing it. So awesome to see Rhythm Heaven. It's a fantastic series, and it's got such charm. And again, it's one of those. It's funny if you compare it to Pokemon. Yeah, the graphics aren't as like ambitious or anything, but it's got a cohesive style. It works, and if you look at like the variety of the mini games, you know, there's a lot. There's like some WarioWare charm to it with some of like the character designs and whatnot. It looks like a lot of fun. I was surprised to see that it was slated for 2026. okay, next year we're still getting Switch 1 game. I mean, that part I expected. Yeah, we're going to get games in 2026, but I didn't think Rhythm Heaven would be we're a year away from release type of game. But awesome to see. I will be buying this day one for sure. After that, we had another Please Take a Look. They announced the virtual game card system. So, as someone with multiple kids and a pretty intimate knowledge of how the family sharing currently works, where I'll go into this here. So, the way it currently works with digital games is anything you buy on your account, you can play on any console signed into your account. But there's a catch. If you're on any console that's not designated as your primary console, you can play your digital games, but it does an online check to see if your primary system is online and playing any of your digital games. So let's say I'm on my Switch Lite playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and my primary Switch, it's not playing anything, so I'm fine. But then let's say, my son boots up Minecraft digitally on my primary Nintendo Switch. It's going to suspend play on the Tears of the Kingdom of the second Switch because it noticed that I was online playing a digital game. It doesn't have to be the same game. As long as you're online on the same profile playing a digital game, it's going to interrupt you. And there's ways to kind of get around it. Like if you go into airplane mode immediately, it gives you, some time where it'll let you play. I think it's like up to 24 hours. But I believe if you go into sleep mode while it's in airplane mode, it may ask you to turn off airplane mode for another check after, I don't know what the time frame is. Sometimes it feels like an hour. Sometimes it feels like way longer. The primary Switch is always going to have priority, so you don't need to do those types of checks if you're on there. But basically, the way the new system works is you could still have your games loaded on two consoles that have your account, and you can swap between them freely. You can unload it from one and then load it on the other. You don't have to do the lending thing, and that's how that works. Then in your family, the cool thing is now you can lend anybody in your family a game for up to 14 days. And after that 14 days, it automatically goes back to your system, and then you can play it again. But the cool thing about doing it this way is that now they have their own save file for the game on their profile. So you don't have to worry about things where with me, I've got like 5 Switches running around with my account to play my games. I have to manually go in and disable save data, upload and download on those consoles, or they're going to overwrite my save data, and that's just not fun. But this way, everybody gets their own save files on their own profiles, and, we're good. Don't have to worry about interrupting anybody's play sessions. So we don't have to worry about who's going into airplane mode or which one's the primary console. It's a lot simpler and smoother. It's just, hey, you want to play Sonic Frontiers? Here, I'll lend it to you for 14 days. And then at the end of that, cool, it's back in my possession. Let me lend you another game. So for someone like me who has a huge digital library, this is awesome. I can just lend games out to any of the kids that want to play any of them. The only downside to this as opposed to the old system is that when you lend a game, you're lending them a game just the same way as if you were giving them the physical cartridge. You can't play that game while they have it. Whereas in the old system, again, you could kind of finagle it with airplane mode where you could both play the same game technically, and you could both play it. But now, if you do lend that game, you can't take the game back unless you're local with them. So that's another thing too. To lend them the game, you have to do like a local connection. I think what it's doing is like loading up the 14-day timer so that even if it's not online, it knows when to disable that game. And the same thing for the system you're lending it on. After that 14 days, it knows to re-enable you to play that game even if you don't go back online. So that's probably why they have you do it locally there, so that you don't have to rely on the internet to regain access to the game, and so that they can make sure that whoever's borrowing the game can't infinitely use it, and after the 14 days it's gone. But it's a lot smoother of a system, I think, and I think it's a surprising step forward for Nintendo when it comes to like digital rights management and just digital library sharing. As of right now, with this announcement, I feel like the only company that has anything going that's better than this is Steam. I mean, Steam is pretty much unbeatable when it comes to digital rights management and ownership and sharing games. Like, it's awesome, but not everybody can be Steam. So the fact that Nintendo made such a big step up is really cool to see. And one thing that I did notice in the trailer, they're in the fine print on one of the slides towards the end of it, they mentioned, like, if you don't want to use, like, the virtual car system, it looks like there's an opt-out in settings where you can continue to use the old system of anybody with your profile signed in can just use the games, but with the online check-in. So it's like, it does have pros and cons. It's not just purely better than the old system. So right here, by navigating to user settings / online license settings and churning the setting to on, you can instead opt to connect to the internet to start up software. So that might be, for me, that reads like, okay, you could still use the old system if you prefer it. Like, you know, if you're in a situation where you just aren't physically close to each other and can see each other to do that lending, then the old system may work better because you just need to sign in. You could do it fully remotely. You don't have to have physical access to that other Switch to do it. So it's really progressive for Nintendo, and I think it's a huge deal. Honestly, in my opinion, it's probably one of the biggest announcements of this Direct, because this is something that's going to carry forward to Switch 2. This is how, you know, game sharing is going to work on Switch 2 as well, along with Switch 1 games. So it's huge. It's awesome. It's a way to just, like the old school, handing someone a cartridge, like, here you go, you can play this game for a while. I've already beaten it. Go ahead. Especially for one-player games, that's going to be amazing. Or even, what's cool about this is it encourages, you know, having that sharing system where it's like, well, I don't know if I want to buy Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, but I wouldn't mind playing it for a few hours and trying it out. So, hey, like, I own the game. I love the game. I know I love the game. That's why I bought it. Let me lend it to you. You could play it for a couple weeks, see if you like it. If you don't, great. Well, you know it's not for you. At least you got to play enough of it that maybe a demo just couldn't for you. Or, like, you know, demos always have a lot of limitations or are curated in a way to give you just bits and pieces of the game and don't let you truly experience the beginning of it. I mean, it depends on the game, right? I know things like Dragon Quest XI-S had a really good demo that basically did just let you play the beginning of the game for like 10 hours, but not every demo's like that. So maybe you just want to try the full experience of the game or try all the features that wouldn't be included in a demo. This is a much better way to do that, where you can try the whole game and see if you like it. And, you know, to somewhat detriment to Nintendo, if it's a one-player game, Super Mario Wonder, looking at the screen now, you could let someone borrow it, they could beat it within 2 weeks, play it with whoever, or just play it solo, burn through the game. Awesome. Now I didn't have to buy the game, but I still got to experience it. And, you know, hey, I bought this game, you know, maybe next time you buy the next WarioWare game and you lend it to me for a couple weeks so I can try it. You know, it's good to have options. The only thing I don't really know how it's going to work is that, let's say you want to give back a game under the 14 days. So let's say I played it for 3 days, I'm good, I don't want to play it, but the original owner of the game wants it back so they can play it. I'm not doing anything with it. Is there a way to end that lending period? Can you turn it in early? And if you can, do you have to be physically close to the Switch again to do so? I want to say probably, if I had to guess, you could probably just connect to the internet on the Switch that has the borrowed game and just say, okay, I'm revoking access. And then the next time that the host Switch goes online, they get that signal saying, okay, they've given up the rights to the virtual game. It's coming back to you. Now you can play it. So I'm sure there's going to be a way to do that where you don't have to wait the full 14 days. It's not like a full, oh, you're going to lose this game for 2 weeks if you let them borrow it. So there probably is going to be a way to do that. I just don't know if it's going to be something you can do remotely like that, which would make sense to me. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to allow that. I understand why, you know, setting it up, you need to do it local because it has to set that timer in the Switch OS itself just in case those Switches never go back online. But if you do have access to online, why not let someone turn it in early if they're not going to play it anymore and give host back access? That's my opinion. I don't know if it's how it's going to work. It may require you to physically be, you know, local wireless connection to do it again. We'll see. Not sure if that's how they're going to go about it. I'd love to know more. But one other thing I did want to talk about with the virtual game card is Nintendo might have spilled the beans on a feature that a lot of us have been speculating on. You've heard me and Soldier talk about how we think Switch 1 backwards compatibility is going to work on the Switch 2. And on the press release for the digital edition of Switch games, there's some interesting verbiage in the fine print that basically says it will work with Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games as well as Nintendo Switch 2 edition games, like Nintendo Switch 2 edition games. So they've clearly mentioned that there will be basically upgraded versions of Switch 1 games. So they have a term for it. You know, it's got its own thing, like Nintendo Selects or something, where like it's its own category of games. How many games are they going to have those types of upgrades for? Who knows? But the fact is, they've put a lot of thought into this, and it sounds like we will get genuine upgrades when running at least certain games on a Switch 2 that are Switch 1 games. So like my dream, I want to replay Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in 60 frames a second, at least 1080p. Or if I can't get that, I would love to just play it in max resolution possible 30. I could live with the 30 frames a second, but, you know, run that in upscaled 4K, that would be a dream. Honestly, I think the Switch 2 might have enough power headroom to do both for a lot of games. You know, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, that's a game that would look amazing with 60 frames a second. And the initial trailers had it in 60 frames. We also know that Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition has like a secret 60 frames per second mode in the software that the Switch can't access. So it sounds like it's not just going to be simple upscales. Like we may actually have a couple routes to go. We could go performance and quality with the upgrades on Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games, which would be really exciting. So it's like, oh, I can choose how much better I want to run this game. I could choose if I'd rather have a higher frame rate, which you've heard me say multiple times on the podcast. I will take 60 frames over 4K or 1080p any day. I'll take the lower resolution because I'm not playing games in screenshots. I'm playing games in motion. Having a smoother motion will always make a bigger difference than having sharper resolution. Because, again, you're constantly moving. You're almost never holding still in a game unless it's like a turn-based RPG, which, you know, those can work a little better. Or more beneficial to have the higher resolution. Even then, though, even if it's Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I would rather play 60 frames a second. So, it sounds like that may be something that we're going to get. But, yeah, in the fine print, I'll just read exactly what it says here. Compatible systems must be linked to a Nintendo account to use virtual game cards. Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games and Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games can only be loaded on a Nintendo Switch 2 system. So they made sure to mention that. It's not an exclusive game, so it's a Nintendo Switch 2 Edition game. So let's, you know, Super Mario Odyssey, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. And that also begs the question, is this going to be a situation, Soldier and I speculated on this, where just having the Switch 2 gives you the best version of the game if you have it digitally in your library? Or is it going to be a Sony situation where they'll make these patches available, they'll put in the efforts to make it the best version of the game, but you got to pay, you know, a $10 upgrade fee if you own it digitally, or just buy it outright at whatever the new price is if you don't own it. That's the thing that we don't know yet. I'm sure these are questions that will be answered on April 2nd. It's just really exciting to have like actual confirmation that, yeah, this is exactly how it's going to work. We are going to get genuine upgrades for Nintendo Switch 1 games on Switch 2. And it's not just, well, it'll be more consistent performance. Like, super stoked. My favorite announcement of the day, easily. But going into some of the other announcements, High on Life, that was random. I did not expect that. And it doesn't look terrible on Switch. This is one of those games that's kind of demanding. I'm surprised they got a Switch version of it working. I don't know if it's like Unreal Engine, so it was easy for them to kind of scale it and port it. Maybe a Switch 2 port I could have seen, but seeing it on Switch 1 was a huge surprise. There's a couple other indie announcements. The one where the villagers are on the back of the beast kind of gives me Titan Xenoblade 2 vibes. So, cool. A lot of other indie small things. High on Life was interesting to see. I was happy to finally see Fantasy Life I again. I am a huge fan of the original 3DS game, so this is one of those day one buys for me. I can't wait for Fantasy Life I. It's one I've been waiting for a long time. Nice to finally have confirmation that it's close. It got delayed a couple times, which was tragic, but May 21st, we are so there. It's a great, comfy, cozy game. One of those, like, you could just kick back, relax, and just enjoy the scenery, the environment, the gameplay. You could be a combat class, or you could be like a woodcutter or a chef. A lot of cool stuff there. It's a great game. If you like cozy games, that's I'm gonna keep saying it. It's a cozy game. That's the best way to describe it. Saga Frontier 2 remastered. That was surprising. It's kind of more in the veins of that Mana game that they remade from the PS1, where it's not HD 2D. It's still kind of like the old school pre-rendered backgrounds with 2D sprites on it. It looks really nice though. I don't think it's a bad style for it. Not everything 2D has to be HD 2D. It looks really cool. I know they recently released the first Saga Frontiers remastered. Or at least it feels like it's been recent, so they're pumping those out. Hey, I'm all about it. Remaster all the old games. Really cool stuff. Here is another one of the ones that was kind of surprising. It's the Everybody's Golf, Top Hot Shots Golf. Again, this is one that I knew what the franchise was. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, that looks like Everybody's Golf. I didn't know it was a Sony exclusive franchise. So now we have a second Sony game on a Nintendo console. So I didn't realize the significance of this in real time. But yeah, like, we're going to start seeing more games like this that, used to be exclusive to one of the other game makers, and they figured, hey, 150 million units is pretty good. I'd like a piece of that pie. They're not going to port Horizon Zero Dawn like the regular full game, but could we see like a Gravity Rush? I would love to see that. That's a game I've been wanting to play, and I'd love to play it, on a modern console. So Gravity Rush and Gravity Rush 2 Switch ports, the door is open. It's something that, if they got dead franchises they're not doing anything with, they're going to let Bandai Namco port it to Switch. So there you go. That's 2 PlayStation franchises that are going to be on Switch. Awesome stuff. Marvel Cosmic Invasion was also announced. Another good-looking beat-em-up with a ton of different characters. This is going to be a good game, I can already tell. It's, great couch co-op. Always a fan of anything couch co-op. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, having that remade was super cool, and this looks like it's going to be the same veins of, like, what was the Ninja Turtles game? Was it Shredder's Revenge or something? That was another really good 2D beat-em-up, so seeing more of these is great. I love these old school type of games, and it looks fantastic. The sprite work is awesome. The moves are flashy, as it should be for a superhero game, and just the co-op. Even if you're playing one player, they mentioned like you can have like a pair of 2 heroes and swap between them on the fly. So even if you're playing by yourself, you do still get a little bit of that variety. And the big announcement was that Tomodachi Life Living the Dream is coming to Nintendo Switch 1 next year. If you look at the trailer, I feel like this was intentional. This looked like an Animal Crossing until I saw the Mii's face on the next frame. I think it faked out a lot of people. They're like, oh my god, new Animal Crossing. But awesome. Tomodachi Life was a cult classic on 3DS. And I didn't realize how popular it was till I went on Twitter and found so many people freaking out about the fact that they're making a new Tomodachi Life. It's the first time they made a new one in over 10 years, I think they said. Cool stuff. I'm not like a big fan of the franchise, but it's always fun seeing like fans of franchises that I'm not super familiar with get to eat. I hope one day that favor can be returned with Golden Sun being revived. A lot of people are speculating that they're kind of hinting at like gay marriage being a thing in this one, because I know that was one of the sore spots of the first game, that there was no same-sex marriage, and they kind of tease it with the 2 girls here that, hey, maybe that's going to be a thing. You'll be able to marry whoever and whatever gender you want. So cool stuff. More fan favorite features. I'm all for it. It looks, you know, nothing super crazy or mind-blowing graphics-wise, but it looks cute, looks charming. So, yeah, Tamagotchi Life. You guys are eating. And then the last thing they announced, they faked us out. It was like, they said, oh, we have one more game announcement today. And it was Tamagotchi Life. And it's like, okay, cool, end of the direct. And they're like, oh, that was the last game announcement, but we also have something else to show you. And then Miyamoto comes on. When he came on the screen, I thought for sure we were going to get some type of update regarding the Super Mario Movie 2. And that I was already ready for. I'm like, okay, cool. Who are we casting for Wario? Do we have a trailer? What's going down? But no, it was actually for a new application for the smartphones, Nintendo Today. Available later today, Shadow dropped. And it's basically, if anybody was around during like the Smash Dojo days for Super Smash Bros. Brawl, it's kind of like that, or it's like a one-stop shop for news, anything related to Nintendo. And you can choose which franchises you want to see information about. And one thing that I thought was really cool, I downloaded it, checked it out, Xenoblade and Fire Emblem are right there, front and center. So you can choose those as options to get news feeds. There's lots of cute animations there. For Splatoon, there's like, they showed like the idol performances. They also showed like some of the like recording in the studio for some of the soundtrack. Tears of the Kingdom, it showed the orchestra playing one of the songs from the game. It's really neat. I think it's like a really cool way for them to drip feed you stuff. If you guys remember Sakurai's daily posts for Smash Bros. For Wii U, I think it was, or Ultimate, where he had a single screenshot like every day of something. And, you know, it's like that, but basically anything Nintendo, they're going to give you information on. So, a lot of really cool stuff. But yeah, I think it was a really solid direct overall. And again, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't really realize the importance of. So the two Sony games being on there, I think those are the ones that were rumored to cause a lot of conversation around. Rhythm Heaven, I'm huge on. I love Rhythm Heaven. Excited to see that come back. The new digital cartridge system is a surprising step forward for Nintendo when it comes to digital rights management and content sharing. Tons of remakes and remasters of games that maybe you wouldn't have expected to see, like the Saga Frontiers, the Raidou from Atlas. So we're seeing a lot of games that, you know, and the AI Somnium Files, the sequel to that. It's a franchise, again, I didn't expect it to go beyond maybe a game or two, but it's going strong. It has a strong enough following to get a third game. So even though there wasn't anything, I don't want to say world-breaking, like there wasn't like your usual suspects, let's put it that way. You didn't have Mario, you didn't have your Zelda, you didn't have Splatoon. I thought this would be a good direct for like a Splatoon spin-off game, something that's not like a core game. Maybe like a Mario Party style thing or just something different. But maybe, you know, maybe next week. But Pokemon was there. That was a big deal. Pokemon sells 20 to 30 million units every time a new game comes out, regardless of how it looks. So seeing a new trailer for Pokemon was a big deal. And of course, the accidental bean spilling of Nintendo Switch 2 editions of games that were originally Switch 1 exclusive. So there is a lot here. And at first glance, it may not have looked like that to me, at least. You know, I'll fully admit I didn't realize how big a deal this was until I really got to take a step back, let it all digest, and kind of read what other people were talking about online. And yeah, I mean, if I had to like regrade this now after seeing everything, especially within the expectations of what, you know, tempered expectations of the big stuff will be there next week. We're going to get the big Mario Kart 9, 10, whatever they're going to call it, blowout. We're going to get potentially a new 3D Mario. Anything that's like part of their core franchises, that's going to be revealed next week for Switch 2 Direct. That we knew. So we knew there wasn't going to be anything like that in this one. But seeing a bigger trailer of Metroid Prime 4 was awesome. They're still holding those Prime 2 and Prime 3 remasters under lock and key, I guess. But yeah, there's a lot more here than initially meets the eye. With with the context behind everything, as well as tempered expectations, I think this is definitely a B, a solid B. Maybe even B+. If you're a fan of some of those franchises that are a little bit more on the niche side, like the Tamagotchi Life, or the Rhythm Heaven, or even like the Raidou, you're an Atlas fan with the old school Shin Megami Tensei spin-offs, Devil Summoner. Yeah, this might have been one that kind of scratched the itch for you and gave you something you didn't expect. And Nintendo always likes to surprise its users. That's the whole point of a Nintendo Direct. It's not just to show you new games, but it's to, celebrate and hype up things and surprise fans. So we got plenty of that. Even if your favorite franchise wasn't there, there was still a lot to love about this Direct. And it was a proper send-off to the Nintendo Switch 1, as well as a reassurance from Nintendo with all these announcements that are 2026 that, hey, we're not just going to give up on this. There are 150 million of these units worldwide that people are using. We're still going to make games for this, so even if you can't get a Switch 2 right away, you're still going to have something to play, and I think that's great. Backwards compatibility is going to help as well, and knowing that there's a Nintendo Switch 2 edition means they don't have to worry about cannibalizing Switch 2 sales with people that are like, well, why would I bother upgrading if I could still play these on Switch 1? Well, knowing that a lot of these games are going to have, like, tangible upgrades on Switch 2 with the Nintendo Switch 2 editions, I mean, a lot of people are going to jump on that. Like, that's a big selling point, especially if you think of it from a standpoint of, it's a step forward. You don't have to start from zero. It's not the jump from Wii U to Switch where you have to start over. Because it has that backwards compatibility, it's more like the DS to 3DS. As soon as you bought a 3DS, you already had a massive library of games to play on it. They didn't look better because the resolution of the screen wasn't 1:1, so that's another story. But the fact is, all of those games get to come with you, so you'll have something to play right from the get-go. And knowing that a lot of those games are going to look and play better means even if the game you want for Switch 2 isn't announced right away, you'll still have something to play on your Switch 2. And it also means that if you wanted to trade in your Switch, a lot of people might, want to try to bring the cost down. We don't know the price of it yet. We'll know next week. But, maybe $400 is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of fans, but maybe GameStop, their heart grows 3 sizes one day, and they decide to offer some type of promo where you could trade in a Switch OLED or a Switch standard unit for an extra 150 credit or something. You can do that safely knowing that, you don't need to hold on to your Switch 1 because the Switch 2 completely makes it obsolete. It's going to be able to play all those games unless you're like a big Labo fan or something. We talked about that with the backwards compatibility, but it's all there. They've played their cards right, in my opinion. I do think it's a little weird they decided to do this a week before the Switch 2 Direct, but there was a lot of announcements here. It wasn't a light Direct. Roughly 30 minutes, and it stretched into like almost 45, I think. So there was enough content to fill a Direct. So, it makes sense. It's the final send-off. There's tons of stuff to play. We still have Metroid Prime 4 and Pokemon Legends ZA as, like, your big games. But anyway, that's enough for me. Like I said, solid B. And with that, on to the Switch 2. I'll see you guys next week. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How'd you guys like the Direct? After hearing my thoughts, do you kind of agree that it was a bigger deal than initially thought? Or do you still feel like it was kind of underwhelming and felt kind of thrown together and just didn't need to be a thing? Should have been an email. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Look forward to our live stream next week when they do the Switch 2 Direct. I will be there. I will drag Soldier by Night out of bed so that he could be there with us, and we may even have another guest join us as well. So stay tuned, guys. Happy gaming.